we're Roisin Ingle. That's right, we're Roisin Ingle, and this is the Big Fright In. See what I did there? Fright night. It's a pun. I already told them about the Big Fright In, Roisin. Sorry, Roisin. You all look amazing in your costumes. Spectacular, may I add. Shout out to Lisa, Georgia, Maisie, and Anne Ingle. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hi, Goldrix. You're looking very well. Hi, Suzanne over there.
What the hell are you doing? I'm doing my big night in.
Big Fright In.
Yeah, it's my big Friday in, and I'm supposed to be sitting there talking to the audience. What are you doing? What are you doing?
We thought we'd start it off for you.
Yeah, well, that wasn't very professional. And also, what are you wearing? You look absolutely ridiculous. Who are you dressed up as? Now, go and have your pizza. Bloody hell. I'm so sorry about that, everyone. Welcome to the... Yeah, thanks for my glasses. Hello, and welcome properly to the Big Night In. Happy Halloween. A little pun on the Big Night In, Big Fright In. See what I did there? A bit of a pun. Thanks for getting dressed up. Oh God, my wig. There's a huge hamper of green and black's chocolate from our sponsor coming to the best dressed person who posts a picture of themselves on Twitter. And you have to use the hashtag #ITBigFrightIn. That's #ITBigFrightIn. Oh God, you are all looking amazing. I have to say, thanks for dressing up. You can also use the hashtag to ask questions and post any thoughts on tonight's event. And stick up your blue hand. And Suzanne, my co-producer, will send you a message. So Suzanne, are you there? She's looking a bit peaky tonight. I don't know if you can. Yeah, that's.
I'm feeling very well.
Now listen, once in a blue moon, in a very blue moon, we get to interview people on the Big Night In that we are such huge fans of on the Women's Podcast. And I apologize in advance because our guest tonight makes me laugh so much that there's going to be snorting. So I'm just warning you about that. She was a published author at the age of 16. She's been an award-winning writer in newspapers since 1992. But many of us came to know and love and admire her for the book that launched 1,000 feminist hot takes, the delightfully witty and very important Feminist Manifesto, How to Be a Woman. And she's just published her 6th book. It's called More Than a Woman, and it opens the door to a stage of our lives, middle age, that doesn't get talked about an awful lot. And she's currently writing her next one. I have to also mention her fantastic novel, How to Build a Girl, which was adapted for film. She also co-created the wonderful TV show Raised by Wolves. She is married to the brilliant music journalist Pete Paphides and is mother to 2 teenage girls. And as I said, we're huge fans here on the Women's Podcast, so I'm so excited to bring you her. Would you please give a massive Big Fright In and a welcome to Caitlin Moran. All of us, I'm so glad you're here. She is. Caitlin, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, my absolute pleasure, darling. You know.
What have you come dressed as?
Well, you might think that I'm not wearing the brilliant Halloween outfit I was planning because the Boris Johnson press conference has been delayed and delayed and delayed. So I was just sitting in front of the television going, come the fuck on and get on with it. And didn't get it. But I'm wearing my Venkman badge, which makes me officially a Ghostbuster, the best Ghostbuster, Peter Venkman. So that's, yeah, sorry, I got a bit delayed by Boris, but now I'm Peter Venkman, so that's good.
Because I thought I was disappointed, but you pulled it out of the bag there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And what are you drinking? Are you having?
Got the gin, I've got my tiny shot glass, which has a frog on it, which tells me there's going to be good times ahead.
Brilliant. And you've no fireworks there. There might be a few fireworks here during the night, so... Are you your dog
fireworks machine? Verbal fireworks.
Oh, there'll be verbal fireworks, definitely. Listen, funny times. The US election on Tuesday. How are you feeling about it? Excited? Terrified? What's going on?
Well, just hoping. And we're planning an all-nighter. Everyone's staying up. The last time we did an all-nighter was for Barack Obama's election, the first one. I've still got pictures of me, one brother and one sister in front of the TV at about 5 o'clock in the morning, each holding an empty bottle of champagne, trying to kiss the TV screen. I don't know if I'd be tempted to kiss Joe Biden if he wins, but I'll certainly be so relieved I'll cry. I'm just hoping, we all know what the good result is. I'm hoping for the good result.
Because you've said before that this is actually a really great time to be a woman, Caitlin, and even despite Trump and everything, but it's this kind of last gasp of the patriarchy.
Well, yeah, I mean, the stats are, I can't remember if it's 2030 or 2035 that America finally becomes minority white. So kind of from 2035 onwards, it's a minority white country. So this is obviously the last gasp of kind of white patriarchy, just trying to desperately grasp on and have one last spin of the roulette wheel. before demographics change America forever. So yeah, you kind of, this is like, Trump's the end of level baddie. He encapsulates everything that's awful about white patriarchy. You know, he's the most extreme example you could have, and that's the end of level baddie. And then once he's done, we move on to a new era, hopefully. I mean, you know me, I'm an incorrigible optimist. Of course I'm optimistic. Of course I think it's all going to be okay in the end.
And speaking of something else, is the pandemic. How is your lockdown life doing? What stage are you at? Because you're on tiers and we're on levels. We're on level 5 here, which is like a video game, but you're on tier 3, is it?
Well, we're just, the press conference is happening now. I think we're just about to go into a tier 5 lockdown everywhere. So yeah, I mean, as a writer, it doesn't affect my life because I just spend my entire life in this room typing, and then take the dog for a walk 1 day a week. But my kids, the difficult part of the pandemic for me has been explaining to my teenage daughters that I didn't invent the pandemic. I didn't invent the rules around it. I'm not the one enforcing them, and it's not my fault they can't see their friends. And that has been a daily conversation since March. So that's the only way it's been bad for me, really.
And the other thing I suppose we've been talking about on the Women's Podcast is how the pandemic affects women, because you've got so many different issues. Women who've had to leave the workforce because of it, women who are in so many caring roles, people in very difficult situations at home in terms of domestic abuse or violence in the home, intimate partner abuse, all that kind of thing. And it does seem, as usual, to be affecting women in a worse way. Do you think it's going to set things back?
Well, I've seen several pieces now saying that it's put feminism back at least 50 years, if not 100, in terms of female jobs and female representation. The first indication of that was the amount of academic papers submitted by women dropped by 85% in the first 3 months of the pandemic, just because women were the ones stuck at home with the kids. So we're losing that ground in researching women's subjects and getting their voices and getting the stats out there and heard. I mean, you have to hope it'll get back to normal once the pandemic is over, but at the moment, it's so difficult for women. Interesting stat in the UK, I don't know if it's mirrored it in Ireland, the biggest wave of infections here now is for women between the ages of 20 and 40. And I was trying to crunch why that would be, and I think it must be because so many women are in the service industries. So they're the ones in restaurants, they're the ones who are carers, they're the ones who are front-facing. And that's the first time we've seen a spike in women. Previously it affected older men. Now it's younger women because they're the ones who are out there in those kind of industries. So as with everything, COVID is a feminist topic.
Right, well, we're going to be talking about a few feminist topics, but we're going to be talking predominantly about the beautiful, sexy time that is in a woman's life called middle age.
Yes.
And I want to ask you about More Than a Woman, which I love so much. And it is like another manifesto. I have it here. And you pick it up at any page and obviously you can laugh and you'll learn something. It's so wise and really useful, I think, Caitlin. So can you tell us about why you came to the idea of writing about this stage of your life, and maybe about the very beginning where you're visited by this ghost of your future self? I just think it's a wonderful opening of a book.
Well, I wrote the first chapter last. I was trying to think of a way to kick off the book, and I think whenever you get the chance to rip off the plot from Back to the Future, you should. So I just love the idea of me now at 45 going back to visit me at the age of 35, the day I finished How to Be a Woman. Because at that age, at 35, I thought all the difficult stuff was done. I thought I'd done the hard bit of being a woman. I had made humans come out of a frankly unsuitable hole in my body. I had raised them to school age. I'd worked out what bras were comfortable. I'd sorted out a good hairstyle. I'd worked out who my good friends were. And I thought that the difficult bit was over and that middle age would be this beautiful era of serenity where I would just simply have long lunches with gal pals, enjoy my capsule wardrobe, and just enjoy kind of just a more leisurely and elegant life. And of course, that's not what middle age turns out to be at all. As I found out, it's the point where you basically turn into the 5th emergency service for your social circle, because you've got older parents who are aging, who need care. You've still got your young children who might be coming into their teenage years, which is a full-time job in itself. You've got to maintain your marriage, your sex life, your partnership with your partner. Your friends are going through divorces, and if you're a reasonably sorted middle-aged woman, you're the one basically holding together the threads of society with your bare hands for absolutely no pay or credit at all. And I wanted to shine a light on those women who are doing that, because I had realised over the years, when How to Be a Woman first came out, when I do events, most of the girls that I was meeting at signings afterwards would be young and quite troubled, and they would, be the girls going through the bad young years, and I would hug them and be like, "Oh, girls, it'll get better, I promise you." And then as the years have gone on, it would be middle-aged women who would come towards me and they'd be going, "No, don't take a picture with me. I'm too ugly. Oh, I'm too tall, I'm like a giant, I'm so fat, I'm going to have to pull my stomach in, like, don't look at me, don't talk to me, I'm too boring. And then you talk to them and you find out that they're judges and teachers and lawyers and nurses and mothers and carers. And I just thought, what is it about middle age that makes women just go, no, don't look at me, don't talk to me, I'm not worth anything? And I was like, I have to write a book about these women in this phase of their lives to just make them feel felt and make them feel that they can walk around going, this is my life, this is what I do, I'm brilliant, I want to take up my space, I want people to know what I'm doing. So I wrote the book on behalf of those women. I wanted to shine the light on middle age and go, there you are, you're all fucking superheroes, I love you.
Well, there's plenty of them on this Zoom call, I think, as well, and we're all.
I can see some of them. It's great. I love being able to scroll across the top of my screen. I see you, Janet. I see you, Patricia. I see you, Barbara Landstreet. Hi, you guys. Except Alona in the Amazing Witch's Hat. Hello.
And Caitlin, I don't know if you ever read a book, I think you'd really like it, called Are You Somebody by Nuala O'Whalon, who's a brilliant Irish writer here. And the reason the book is called Are You Somebody is because of a kind of situation she got to in middle age, where she was sort of a prominent journalist, but she reached a part of her life where she kind of was walking along the street and didn't feel like the invisibility of middle age, I suppose. And that's why she called the book Are You Somebody? Like, are we anybody? Like, do we just kind of drift into this next phase and suddenly we're not relevant, we're not important, our stories aren't heard? Is that kind of where you were coming from?
Well, I think you get this sense, like, I mean, it's never explained to you, but you just simply see it in the films that you watch and the way that we talk about women. You know at a very early age that your good years are your young years as a woman. It's when you're pert and young and sexy and you have sexual capital and your bosoms are still pointing upwards and you're svelte and sleek, and that those will be your great years. And then when you get to about 35, suddenly everything drops and you wither, and then presumably you're just like put in a box and put away on a shelf with "don't bother with her" anymore written on it. And you have that innate sense that kind of that's where your life starts to disappear. And for myself, I have found it to be the other way around, because I was a very young, very big girl in NHS glasses with no confidence at all. And as I've got older, I've started swimming in lakes and doing yoga, and I now feel better about myself than I did when I was younger. And I found that a really interesting narrative. I was like, what if it wasn't how everybody told you? What if it actually gets better as you grow older? That yes, you lose skin elasticity, but you also lose the amount of fucks that you give. You learn what to eat that makes you feel good. You learn what to do that makes you feel happy. Especially if you're doing something like yoga. Yoga fucks with the clocks, because if you're doing yoga every day, you get stronger and better at it. So the point where I'll be at my best physically is the day before I die, because I will be doing yoga up until the day that I die. And I was like, this is a mind blower. Like, what if life just got better and better if you were a woman? What if that was the big secret they were keeping from you?
And so is that because you said you wanted this to be useful, and I really think it is. I found it a very hopeful book. Like I was sort of texting you as I was reading it and saying, oh, it made me joyful instead of making me kind of depressed, which is what, like you say, is the narrative that we're supposed to have. And it doesn't have to be that way, but somehow if you're fed a sort of story like that, you kind of believe it.
Totally. And if that's what we all have, like, we all sort of feel our lives are a bit like a movie, and this is like kind of, this is my low point, and in a minute I'll have my makeover, and then we pace our lives in our heads like a movie. And I was like, the lives of the women that I know are not like the movies about women. Like, kind of the ones that I know, the older they get, the thing that every woman tells you once they get past the menopause is, I wish young women felt as confident in gone through the menopause feel when they were 25. Because if young women gave us few fucks and felt as amazing as they do, as older women do, then we would have a revolution tomorrow. Like, if we could have the strong, confident women who don't give a fuck, the older women, and the younger women feeling like that, the patriarchy would end in 25 minutes flat. So I only ever want to write joyful books. And obviously the book goes through sort of some bad years and some difficult times. But at the end of it, you've just got this brilliant revelation that being a woman, the difficult bit is the middle years, because you're juggling all this stuff. You're keeping your career going, you're looking after your parents, you're keeping your social circles going, you're looking after your kids, you're trying to develop yourself and look after yourself. And that's where you can often get resentful about your male peers, because they're not doing the emotional labor, they're not doing the second shift, and you see them in their careers going on, being really successful. Suddenly they've got a yacht and they've got an ISA and they're doing really well. But as we get older, the playing field starts to level, because men don't know how to transition into a third act in their lives. As they get older, they either go back to the first act in their life again, they have the midlife crisis, they get the motorbike and the tattoo, and they start smoking again, or they go back to the second act of their life and live that out again. They get married for the second time and have a second family. They don't know how to transition into a third act. But older women have an amazing third act. When they retire, suddenly they're climbing mountains and founding charities and learning how to dance, and they're just out with their mates playing bingo. And the men tend to sort of not know how to deal with that. So it's a long game being a woman. And I think it's, as you get older, you start thinking, actually, maybe I am the best gender.
And I'm not generalizing, but a lot of those men seem to be on bikes, in my experience. There seems to be a bike thing that happens.
It's weird, isn't it? It's like the man machine. They're kind of like, as their bodies fail, they're like, yes, and I must become half man, half bike, and I will wear and also I think the thing is with men, I mean, I love men. I never want to be man-hating, but I just find them amusing in the way that they've found women amusing for 10,000 years. Men don't ever seem to be able to have just one bike. Like my husband has 3. He's got a foldable bike, he's got a countryside bike, and he's got a city bike. So why do you need 3? I mean, even if you were using them as roller skates and putting one on each feet, that's only 2 you need. What's the third one for? What's so many bikes? And so many women I know are angry about their hallways because there's just lots of bikes in it.
I was talking to Sharon Horgan recently, and I was very impressed. I thought I was talking to her in a bike shop because she had all these bikes on the wall. I think that's the way to go to solve the hallway thing. She had them hanging up on the wall.
It would snag my hair. I mean, I hear it is a practical thing, but I'm just like, my hair is quite wide. I would be going past that bike and getting it snagged. That would make me angry, I think.
Caitlin, I have to say I'm very distracted by all the beautiful witches on this call. I don't know if you can see them, like Septa, I'm loving it. Jennifer, Ruth, you are really playing a binder. And I want you to post a picture of yourself on Twitter, hashtag IT Big Fright in, as my daughters who were, I don't know if you thought that impression was any good. I think it's disgraceful. It wasn't a bit like me, and it was absolutely offensive in the highest order. Caitlin, you mentioned sex earlier, and we have to talk about it because you divide the book up into hours. So there's the hour of this and the hour of that. Can you please tell everyone about the maintenance shag? Because I know they will be all ears.
Well, it's a useful idea. So the idea of the book is based on the medieval Book of Hours, which was that in medieval times, women's days were split into hours. So you'd have the hour of milking the cows and the hours of praying and the hours of washing. And I was like, well, in the 21st century, things haven't really changed because every middle-aged woman has a to-do list. And it's as long as your life is going to last. Everything is on the to-do list. And as your relationship gets older and you spend more time with your partner, the initial rip your clothes off thrill of sex disappears under an avalanche of things that are on the to-do list. And suddenly you can get to a point where you're like, it's been 3 months since we've had sex. And hang on, we had sex. We used to do what? And you would say, what? And we would, no, it just sounds a bit weird. I don't think we ever did that. And I don't think we ever will again. Because you lose the ability to have spontaneous sex. So what you must do if you do want to keep your sex life together is to schedule it. You just have to have the maintenance shag. And we schedule ours on Friday mornings at 8:30 when the kids have gone to school. And that's just when we have sex. And even though for the first 5 minutes we're like, oh, it's a bit weird, I'm not sure about this. After 10 minutes, you remember what a lovely hobby it is. It doesn't cost you any money. It doesn't make you put on weight, and afterwards you feel very chilled. And then you often find that once you've had the maintenance shag and remembered how great it is, that you have a kind of free bog-off shag within the next 24 hours because you remembered how great it is. And you're like, let's just have a
bog-off shag. Explain the bog-off shag. Come on.
Well, just sort of within 24 hours of having had your maintenance shag, you're like, oh, I remember how great it is. Should we do it again? Twice in a week. And you don't have to plan that one. It doesn't always happen. But I was saddened that many people who hadn't read the book thought that the maintenance shag was women who would stop wanting to have sex, having sex with their teeth gritted, thinking of England just in order to satisfy their male partner. Yeah. It's not that at all. It's when both of you still want to do it, but you just can't work out how that will ever happen. And the answer is the only way it will ever happen is if you just put it on the diary, put it in the schedule.
And tell everyone what your little code for the maintenance shag is in your diary.
Well, we didn't want the kids to know when we were having sex, so I would just write waka waka waka, which is what Fozzie Bear in the Muppets says, which I still fancy Fozzie Bear quite a lot. So that to me is the most sexual 3 words that I could think of to put in the calendar that my children wouldn't guess.
But you do have to, especially with sort of teenagers in the house, you do kind of have to be careful because there was one incident which I hope you can just let people know about that wasn't ideal.
Oh God, there's been so many, but the worst one recently was I realised that when we got our loft extension done, we possibly didn't pay the extra that we should have for proper insulation, sound insulation. So we were having some sex, And I could hear my phone pinging and pinging and pinging and pinging. And when we'd finally finished having the sex, I picked up my phone to see what it was. And on our family WhatsApp group, my kids had been texting me and my husband all the way through, sort of going, "That sounds like a horrible bit. I don't think you're doing it properly. Please stop now." And then one of them had recorded it and then downloaded the sound file onto a family WhatsApp, which I've still been too scared to listen to. I don't want to know what I sound like having sex. So yeah, that was pretty bad. But then they interrupt it. The dog interrupts it. Dogs generally don't understand what sex is. They just presume you're having a fight. So they'll just sort of sit on the edge of the bed looking really sad. And then my husband is more soft-hearted than me. I'll be like, take the dog out the room, lock the door, or we won't be able to have sex. And he'll be like, but she looks so sad. We need to comfort her. And I'll be like, no, I don't care. Just put the dog on the other side of the door. We need to, sex is between the two of us. We're not involving the dog anymore.
I have to say, Caitlin, my mum, I think, is on the call, Anne Ingle, wherever she is. I don't know if she's dressed up. I don't know if she's made the effort. Mum, you should have made the effort if you didn't. But I'm in a book club with her, Caitlin, and every single time she goes straight to the sex scenes. So I'd say she's really enjoyed this bit now. You've pretty done well by my mum, Anne Ingle. So thanks very much for that.
Hope you liked it, Anne. Hope it was useful.
Can we move on to the menopause then? Because again, another one of those subjects and things that affects women that I don't think is given enough airtime, and something that we're all supposed to just kind of get through and, you know, not talk about and kind of keep quiet. And there's people at work having really difficult times and are not able to actually say, well, this is why, this is what's, did you hear that fireworks? Great around here. This is why it's happening. So you're very good on that. Tell us what you think about menopause and where you are now, if you don't mind me asking. What's your...
No, God, absolutely. No, we all need to talk about these things. So I'm perimenopausal now, and I didn't realise that I was until I spent a year being so very sad and angry, and then went to the doctors and they did my bloods, and all of my hormones were through the floor, plus my vitamin D, which apparently is a really common thing. Basically, any white woman in Northern Europe is probably deficient in vitamin D, and it's worth just getting some tablets and giving them to yourself, particularly if you're very sad. So I've now got bottles and bottles of vitamin D tablets in the house, and they make a huge difference. But I started to experience sort of the early phases of menopause, and it was really interesting because I'd read about it and I thought it was mainly hot flushes. That was mainly what I knew about it. It was just hot flushes, and I didn't know that it was this anger, this terrible, terrible anger. And having been a bit of a rock and roll girl in the 90s, I found it interesting because it was exactly like coming down off drugs. Like, I suddenly realized that estrogen is basically like ecstasy. Estrogen's this lovely female hormone that gives you all those female attributes, those sort of cliched female attributes we talk about. It makes you more loving, it makes you more forgiving, it makes you more patient. And as the estrogen slowly drains out of you, you start to feel like you're coming down off the pill, and suddenly who you are underneath this big drug that you've been on since you started your periods at the age of 13 disappears from your body, and you see who you are. And I suddenly felt that I'd got all the rage that I would have had if I'd been a teenage boy and a man, an adult man. I was like, oh my God, I'm suddenly just full of this anger, and I've never experienced it before, so I don't know how to cope with it. And it can lead you to standing there going, have I basically been kind of drunk and off my face for the last 25 years on this drug? Like, kind of, have I been foolish? Like, have I spent all this time making lovely homes and looking after my children and being kind and forgiving? And that's disadvantaged me because I see the people who weren't on this lovely, caring, homemaking, child looking after drug, their careers have all shot ahead of me. They're all richer than me. They've all got ISAs. Their careers are far in advance of mine. Have I been off my face and kind of wasted the last 30 years? And that was the very sad and dolorous phase to go through. And then I realized, then I had my realization that kind of, that yes, men at this age might be having an advantage in terms of their career. But as I say, they don't know what to do in their third act. Kind of as they get older, they don't know, they tend to lose their friendship circles. They don't really know what to do with themselves once their careers end. Whereas the reason it's so difficult at the moment is because we're keeping our careers going and looking after the family and looking after our friends and keeping our hobbies going and improving ourselves. And all of that pays off later down the line. Whereas men tend not to keep those things going. They don't spin all those plates. So when the career ends, they're like, well, who am I? And that's when they have their big crisis. So yes, that was the journey that I've been through so far, kind of realizing that you're coming down off these drugs, but that the long game is there to be won if you are a lady.
And do you think then, Caitlin, like that we should talk about it to each other? Because like it is something that I don't know about everyone here, but maybe give a little wave if you do talk about it a lot, and then we can check it out. But yeah, okay, that's great. Janine does, and a few other people do. But I think it's like something we're supposed to be a little bit ashamed of, that we should just suck it up, get on with it. But why do we have to be like that about something that's our health, that's, you know, that's important, that has such an effect on us psychologically, emotionally, physically?
Well, because I mean, the thing about being a feminist, when you put on your feminist glasses and you after a while go, looking at the world through my feminist glasses hurts, the world looks worse than I thought it was, I'm going to put it down. Part of that is coming to the realization that men have had control of the word normal for all of history. So everything that is normal is a thing that happens to men, and everything that is abnormal is things that happen to women. So periods, you know, menstruation, and then menopause are still seen as an abnormal, weird thing. Like, kind of ideally we shouldn't have to deal with it. And sort of the women that will have succeeded previously are the ones that just never referenced it. You know, you won't see any sort of early suffragettes talking about the menopause. You won't see sort of like pioneering female executives in the 1950s talking about the menopause, because when you walked into those men's room, you basically had to pretend to be a man. And it's only now as we get this tiny little increase in increment in kind of women in places of power and women who have got platforms where you can go, hang on, we need to expand the definition of the word normal, because 52% of the population, this is their normal. Like, kind of, we need to be talking about this.
Yeah. You talked about sort of feeling narky and sad, and one really interesting bit in the book, which people have talked about a lot, is this, you know, people talk about resting bitch face, but you didn't have that. You had resting very, what was the, you said?
Sad widow surveys her war-ravaged face, the sad face. Yeah. No, kind of, I just looked so sad. Mainly
going back to what you said at the beginning about how you thought you'd all sorted out, and like in How to Be a Woman, you told us a lot of things, you know, and you said where you were thinking about, you know, things like plastic surgery, things like Botox. And it was really amazing when I started to read that chapter about, oh my God, is she about to say I've had Botox? And then you did.
Yeah.
And tell everyone about that, because it was basically about that resting sad face that you had, and you just didn't want to see that anymore. You wanted to kind of do something about it.
Well, there were two things. First of all, I had gone through, I'm sure we'll talk about it later, a couple of really, really terrible years where everything in our family kind of collapsed, and it was terrible. And so I was incredibly sad, like unusually and clinically very, very sad. And so I just spent a lot of my time crying, and it really showed on my face. So that was one reason why I was like, I don't want to look sad, like kind of this sadness process has accelerated and I'd like to do something about it. But the other reason was, working in the media, I know how many women that we think of being naturally beautiful, who've never had any kind of medical intervention whatsoever, have had medical interventions. Like, kind of, I can't name names, but the top 3 older women that people cite and go, I want to age naturally like her. She's had no Botox, she's had no mesotherapy or lasers or facelifts or anything like that, and I want to age like her. And I know for a fact they've all had Botox, they've all had fillers, they've all just had the really careful, subtle, expensive ones, but they've had them. And that puts us in a difficult position, because it makes normal women who don't have access to these things think, well, I just must be naturally, I'm just aging in dog years. I have more known DNA than these beautiful, famous women. I'm doing something wrong. So maybe I need to have more serums and eat more food supplements and get a silk pillow and and just do all these other things that are acceptable if you're a feminist, which are so time consuming and so expensive and so less effective than just getting some Botox. And I was like, well, if feminism is anything, it's got to be being honest about what it's like to be a woman. I'm happy to stand up and say that I've had it, to hopefully start a conversation that means these women that at the moment have to keep this huge secret can go, oh, actually, I have too. Like, we just need to know the truth of what it is. If we value beauty, which we still obviously do as a culture, we need to talk about why it is that people we think are most beautiful, rather than just making the rest of us think, oh, it's just that I'm not meditating enough, I'm just not drinking enough water, I'm not putting enough Vaseline on my lips. None of those things will make you look like some of our national treasures that we keep talking about being very fresh-faced and beautiful but not having any medical interventions. They have all had them.
Emily says, I got Botox and I tell everyone. I love that, Emily. Fair play. Lovely. And Caitlin, what did you think it did for you? What did you feel like once you got your first bit? Were you worried about the kind of frozen thing that everyone talks about, you know, not being able to express yourself, which seems like something would never happen to you?
You can see the face is still pretty mobile. I went to see the woman that everybody goes to see to have like a tiny bit that just looks natural and just chills your face out a bit. So I was obviously scared in case, but I knew that I was going to see someone who's, because a lot of it's down to the aesthetics of who you go and see. Some people want that super false look, and if they want that, fair fucks. If you want the Love Island look and that's your thing, do it. And it's interesting because the sort of feminist class praxis is interesting in this because it tends to be middle-aged feminists who go, you should look naturally beautiful. Working class women that I know, when they get Botox or when they get fillers done, they're like, look, I've had my fillers, I've had my Botox, I've earned my money, I've spent it on this, I look fucking fabulous. Right. Whereas it's the middle class women who go, no, you must look naturally beautiful. And the middle class women who tend to say that very often tend to be very naturally beautiful with incredible cheekbones and naturally beautiful skin, who look great in all manner of clothes. And they're the same ones that say, oh, it's maybe not feminist to wear makeup. And it's like, well, look, if you're naturally beautiful, then you can say that. But like, if some of us who are maybe more ham-faced want to acquire a skill that allows us to draw different faces on and have brightly coloured lips and eyes and wear wigs and do all this stuff to ourselves, why can't we create ourselves? Why do I have to accept how I was born? I will accept science in everything else. I use a washing machine. I use contact lenses. I dye my hair. Like, you know, science has generally been really good for me as a woman. It meant that I didn't die in childbirth. It means that I have effective contraception. It means I can talk to you now. Why are we picky about, you know, it's always stuff to do with women. It's always the fact that as a woman you have to explain every single aspect of yourself. You need to have a thesis to explain why you wear what you wear, do what you do, fuck who you fuck, eat what you eat, drink what you drink. It's my job to be able to provide those theses and I hopefully give them to other people and go, look, if you need to explain why you as a woman have done something and it's something I've done, just give them that chapter. You know, just quote it to them in a pub. I'm going to save you the time. But I am very aware that women constantly have to have worked out why they do everything and have an absolutely watertight theory for why they have done it before they can do anything at all. And that's why we're so tired and sad. And that's why we age. And that's why we need Botox.
I take all your points. Did you get any sort of blowback from it? Did you get some people who just thought, no, Caitlin Moran, that is not feminist of you. What are you doing?
I saw a couple, but like kind of, it really wasn't that much. I thought it was going to be massively contentious, but everyone, I mean, I guess we've all got bigger fish to fry generally in terms of the world and the economy at the moment. But most people, because I tried to put the whole thing out there, just sort of went, oh, that is fair enough. Yeah, why shouldn't we be telling the truth about what it is that these beautiful women are doing in order to look like that? And why the fuck not? Like, you know, if you get your teeth whitened, if you get your hair dyed, you know, you're already in a game. Like, why not use all the things in the game if that's what you want? But I have to say, like, kind of, I'm not against aging. I don't want to look younger than I am. I just want to look, what everybody says, the best version of what I am. I want to look like basically I've just come back off holiday and that I've always had an uninterrupted 8 hours sleep. That's what I want. I love all my wrinkles. I love my wattle. I've got my wattle. I'm happy to be getting my nan's hands.
Wattle. We've all got a little bit of wattle.
I find it really comforting. I like moving it around. It's like a little executive play toy. It's quite pleasant. So,
Caitlin, Breda did say just now, is it not toxic? So that's a thing that people do worry about, you know, the kind of dangers of it.
Oh, no, totally. But, you know, so is gin, to be honest, and so is the nicotine in my vape, and so is the air in London. You know, there's toxins everywhere, but you know, you just make sure that you go and see someone who's really good at what they do and who is really safe, and it's just one of those risks that you can choose to take as a grown lady. But I don't know anyone who's had a bad effect from it if they've gone to see someone good. So
okay, Caitlin, you mentioned some difficult times in your family, and we are going to talk about that, but I also wanted to, one of the bits that I think moved me a lot from your book was when your daughter was worried about not being pretty. Okay, and I think, you know, young people these days with Instagram and everything else, with all these visions of what they're supposed to be and what they're supposed to look like, I think it is different for us because I don't think we had as much of that. We were able to kind of go and invent it a little bit. Okay, there was always standards, but not as much as now, I think. But there's a beautiful bit in your book. I'd just love to read a little bit of it out for people because I just think, again, the book is really useful and helpful. So It's about the single most magic sentence a woman can hear. This is somebody who's wondering, a young person, about their beauty. And it's this: you are a beholder. Realizing you are the beholder is a spell that sets you free. You are not the beauty, you are the beholder. You are not to, you are to see it. You are the one who gets to point at beauty, to define it, enjoy it, to write about it, photograph it, sing about it, rejoice in it, and see it in others. Isn't it more fun to look at beauty than be it? To be beautiful often causes problems. To look at beauty causes none. To decide what's beautiful give you power. I say this to my daughter and every other woman in the world. People don't need you to be beautiful. It is not necessary for the function of this world that you be hot. My wig is going. You affect literally nothing if you don't look like a model. And you quote Erin McKean, who said, you don't owe prettiness to anyone. I love that bit because I wish I'd been told that, actually. I wish I'd heard that. And I think it's a really powerful message. And not just for younger women, actually. I think we could all use it, even as we age.
Oh, totally. Well, the problem with beauty is that the definition of it is so narrow. And I think this is often what makes women, particularly younger women, when you're working out who you are and your body's changing and you're working out how you want to look and what you want to do in the world, is that beauty is a system in which we pay tax, but which we have no vote. So we know what beautiful women look like, but who decided who the beautiful women are? It wasn't me, it wasn't you, it wasn't anyone on this call, it isn't any women we know. The ideas of beauty were set in stone decades or millennia ago. And we're starting to change those a bit now. It's one of the positive things about social media is because everyone can broadcast. It was very interesting when Instagram first started, there was a bit of a moral flap about young teenage girls constantly being bombarded with pictures of very beautiful, very thin, blonde girls, very pale or very tan. And going, this is very restrictive notion of beauty, and this is going to cause a massive rise in body dysmorphia and eating disorders and self-hatred for young women. Should we regulate Instagram? Should the government step in? This is wounding to young women. And we always underestimate how brilliant young women are, because the biggest growth in accounts on social media in the last couple of years have been people from body positive movements. Girls who were big, girls who were covered in stretch marks, girls who are not conventionally beautiful, girls with scars, girls with alopecia, posting pictures of themselves on Instagram with hashtag I am beautiful. And young girls went and fixed that. The first chance that women got in all of our history to be able to broadcast to other girls, one of the very first things they did within a couple of years of it being invented was to go, we're going to decide what beauty is. And that ties in with that chapter. It's realizing that beauty isn't a thing that other people point at and you have to conform to. It's you going, what do I think is beautiful? I get to invent what is beautiful, and I can be inspired by everything. It doesn't need to be people. I can be inspired by, I think this tree is particularly beautiful, so I will get an eyeshadow that is the colour of this tree. I think Barbara Streisand's nose is fantastic. I'm going to wish I had a bigger nose. Like, kind of, these are, you get to decide. And finally, women are getting to decide in the system of beauty what they think is beautiful, because we have these alternate channels now. And slowly that's starting to feed through into mainstream media and culture. I mean, someone like Lizzo coming along is incredible. If I had a girl like Lizzo when I was a teenager, my entire life would be different. She was on the main stage she was on the West Holt stage at Glastonbury last year, to the biggest audience I've ever seen there. And she came on in a tiny leotard with a massive camel toe, dancing, just looking glorious and happy, so full of positivity and joy, brought on 30 or 40 other dancers as big as her, and they all turned round and pushed their asses into the camera, and it was this wall of gigantic art, and the entire screaming, going, this is amazing. And my mind was just exploding 50 different ways, going, oh God, every young girl who sees this, their life is going to be changed, because Lizzo's doing exactly that. She's being the beholder. She's saying, this is what I think is beautiful. Look at my gigantic ass. It's amazing. And that's the power we all have. This is the beauty of feminism. We forget that feminism isn't a science. It wasn't discovered by looking through a special microscope and finding a feminist isotope. There are no rules to it. There's no feminist kingdom. There's no feminist Bible. There's no feminist rules. Feminism is an entirely cultural experience that has been made by millions of women just like us across the world who saw a problem, went, I don't think this is just me. I think other women might have experienced this problem. This isn't me making a mistake. I think other women might be experiencing this as well, sharing their experience, naming, talking about how they'll. And that's the entire basis of feminism, is women across the world talking to each other going, hang on, does this make you feel shit? could we change this? I think we could. And no one's ever controlled it. There was never a central plan for it. Like no one ever got together and went, this is what feminism's going to do. We all just went out there and did all these different bits. And every time I remember this, I cry. It's just, humanity has never worked in this interconnected way on any other project before. It's so beautiful.
It reminds me of you looking at repeal and actually, you know, the whole thing that happened with abortion in this country and how delighted you were to watch the sort of female grassroots movement that happened in Ireland and changed everything.
Oh God, it blew, because we had been, when did I come over? When was repeal? Was it 2018? When was it?
2018.
So we were 2 years post Brexit, and like I'd forgotten, because we'd spent 2 years in the UK being so dolorous about progressive movements. It just felt like everything was going backwards, that progressive movements were going to be out of fashion for, you know, a whole decade, a whole life cycle. And then the last time I came over to Dublin and just going to the pub afterwards, obviously, and talking to all the beautiful repeal women, and just, you were all so positive. You were all just like, we can do this and we can do that, and this is what we've worked out, and these are the networks that we've made, and this is where we could go to next. And it was like, fuck, like, I've forgotten how depressed we are in the UK compared to how positive you are there because you made this incredible thing happen. And then getting really angry because it was the only progressive movement that has worked in the Western world in the last 4 years. And I have to think that then you would be on the cover of Time magazine. Every single woman who worked on the repeal campaign would be a very highly paid consultant to other progressive movements across the world. And you'd be in like getting these huge TED Talks, and you'd be like up for Nobel Prizes. But because it was women, it was just presumed like, oh yeah, well, women always sort things out. Like, no, it was genius. It was absolute fucking genius. You worked hard to make it work, and you did it. And no one else in a progressive movement in the Western world in the last years managed to do that. You're the only ones. And there you all just were in the pub, just going, carry on things for very little credit in the wider world.
Caitlin, I do want to talk to you about your difficult family situation, because it really was for you. I think one of the things that stood out for me was the fact that it was such a lesson in empathy. Can you tell everyone what happened in your family and that journey that you went on with it? Because I think a lot of people would have younger relatives who are going through it, and it's sadly something that, you know, we hear a lot about.
Yeah, so when you become a parent, you imagine a lot of things and you game for a lot of difficulties and obstacles, but you almost certainly probably won't have gamed for your child becoming seriously mentally ill. It's one of the things you tend not to imagine. You don't want to imagine it. And so my daughter became severely clinically depressed and anxious, which then I didn't know what to do. I gamed nearly everything else, but I didn't know how to. My childhood, I was raised in a house where no one cared if you were sad. Like, kind of sadness had no currency. Sad, just cheer up and crack on. And so when she became sad, I kind of started there in a nicer version of that, because I've learned from my childhood. It was kind of like, I'll jolly you out of it. Like, we'll buy Buckaroo and I'll buy you Pet Rats and we'll watch The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt and I'll give you a foot massage and everything's going to be delightful and the delightfulness will cure you. And delightfulness will not cure a severe mental illness. So then I tried to reason her out of it. I was like, I am a reasoning person. You know, I understand many of these things. And I would sit on her bed and give her these TED Talks about nutrition and brain function and the history of women through time who have deprived themselves of foods and the political and religious connotations of that. And amazingly, that TED Talk, I could not reason her out of it. That did not work. She would just put up her hood and just be the hoodie and be like, stop being Wikipedia at me. You can't Wikipedia me out of a severe mental illness. And then I tried anger. I tried despair, and it took me 2 years to realise what I needed to do, which was to be able to look at her after getting a lot of therapy myself and go, I am not scared of your sadness. First of all, I am going to say what I see, which I had not done before. I'm going to say what I see. You are sad. You are anxious. You are unhappy. I see that. I acknowledge that. I am not scared of that. I love you, whatever happens, and we are going to get through this together. And once I'd said those things in that order, that was like a key that unlocked finally being able to help her. Because previously, everything that she had done was, she knew that she couldn't verbally tell me she was unhappy because I would not want to listen to that. So an eating disorder and self-harm, they are non-verbal ways of communicating. So she was trying to tell me how unhappy she was when words didn't work. And when I could finally go use words again and go, you are unhappy, I see that, I'm going to help you, then she didn't need to self-harm and stop eating anymore. And so that was when we started to make progress. And there were obviously many other factors that helped. She finally got the CBT she needed, cognitive behavioural therapy that she needed. She saw a nutritionist who helped her, because we'd been on the waiting list for so long to get help. But one of the reasons, there were many reasons why I wanted to write about it. One, she told me to. She said, quite rightly, I think if you have any kind of public platform and you can say that your family has experienced this thing that does have all this guilt and shame associated with it, it allows other people to go, okay, well, she's talking about it. Maybe there isn't shame about it. And thirdly, because we were lucky enough to have a good story. And when I went to read about it when she was ill, I couldn't find any positive stories at all. Every story I found ended badly. And the thing you need the most when you find out when your child is in that much distress is just at least one piece of hope that will keep you going through it. So there were multiple reasons why I wanted to write about it, but the most important one was that she had said, you must write about it. You must be able to help people. So she is, she's an incredible girl. She's now completely cured. She's off tonight, socially distanced, trick-or-treating with her friends in a wood somewhere, apparently. But yeah, I mean, being able to write about that, I think is the most useful thing I've ever done in my life. I've written about many things, but that's the thing that's had the biggest response. I have had thousands and thousands of parents going, you've finally given me a way to talk about this. You've made me understand how these things happen and how I can help my child. And just thank you. And that, I like to amuse people. I like to make people feel good about themselves. But the thing I want to do most of all is be useful. And that's been really, really useful, I think.
I think it really, really has. And thank you so much, because I feel like there's so much in this. My kids are 11. You saw them earlier. They have the measure of me anyway, but they're coming into that, teenage time at some point. And I feel like this is a bit of a manual for me. So thank you very, very much. I'm going to open it up to questions in a moment, but before people put their blue hands up and send Suzanne their questions, tell me what you think of the state of feminism at the moment. Like, what's your big vision of it now? Because from when you started How to Be a Woman, it's much more intersectional, it's a much more inclusive, I think. It's a much broader church than perhaps it used to be. Would you agree with that?
No, totally. And so much of that is, so much of feminism intersects with social media, that the bad things about feminism at the moment are accelerated by social media. So for women, if you are speaking out about feminist issues, or if you're talking about intersectional issues, you will get so much abuse. You will get so many trolls and rape and death threats, and that's very deleterious to female mental health. That's, and it puts a lot of other people off talking about it and saying that I'm a feminist, because they can see you can be prone to a lot of abuse. But on the other hand, because we have social media, and that everyone can join in. One of the reasons why feminism was so white and middle class previously is because those are the kind of women who would get platforms on TV and on radio and in newspapers. They would get columns, they would have media jobs. And so whenever we tried to talk about intersectionality before, it would be white women talking about intersectionality, which is of no use at all. You need to have women of colour being able to talk about their experience. You need to have trans women talking about their experience. You need to have LGBT women talking about their experience. And social media allows them to do that instantly, straight away, talking to the world. So it's a very mixed thing. Like, kind of, I would urge all women who get scared about social media and talking about these things to go, yeah, just try and hang on in there. I know how tough it is, but that's still the platform where we can share these ideas. And the exchange of ideas is so rapid. The difference in the amount of ideas and concepts that are being talked about in feminism in the last 10 years has expanded exponentially. It's absolutely vast. Feminism has become so much huger, so much more diverse, and so much stronger, and so much funnier, and so much more flexible, and so much more joyful in the last 10 years, just because anybody can join in. If you're willing to kind of turn off your mentions for a couple of days in case you get some kind of troll attack, you can have your voice heard in a way that previously only a couple of dozen white middle-class women in the Western world would be able to get their voices heard. And that's an extraordinary power that suddenly every woman has.
You're waiting for Boris to do his talk, but what do you think about Tuesday? Do you think Trump is gone now? What's your feelings?
Like, kind of, I think I'm going to generalize here. I'm going to suspect that people are generally quite liberal who are listening to this, because feminist tends to be. And I think there is a fear, like almost like a superstition on behalf of progressive liberal people, that if you're a bad person, if you're evil, and if you're willing to cheat and lie, that somehow that makes you indestructible. Like kind of, you'll just never go. And I think we're starting to think that Trump is indestructible and will never go. And he will, like kind of, you know, I truly believe that he will go. He is destructible. And I think the change that will happen in people's minds, just the space, just to not have to think what this asshat is thinking or saying or doing this week will be amazing. Like, I was imagining what it would be like to just have him erased from my mind if he does finally fuck off on Tuesday. I'll be like 30% more productive. I'll be 50% happier. Like, I just imagine not having to care what this fucking asshat does anymore. It'll be amazing. We will party so hard. It'll be the greatest gift the world has given to itself. So I'm very positive that he will go. I hope so anyway. I haven't jinxed the election by saying that. But
I'm with you. I'm saying that. I'm telling my girls, because the last time I remember I did stay up all night. I fell asleep finally at the sofa to see him arrive at the podium, and I thought I was having a nightmare, and it was real. And my girls couldn't go to school that morning because I was so traumatized. They were terrified to leave me. So I don't want a repeat of that. I mean, we just can't have it.
Well, I think particularly women, you know, because like we know what a sexual predator he is. I think, you know, particularly women have been traumatized since that day. It was like, oh my God, you know, you always think that, like, you know, the end of level baddie won't ever make it to the White House. And when he does, you're suddenly like, my God, is this the beginning of the end? But imagine if he goes after 4 years. And I love the fact that Biden's campaign has just been very on the back foot, very quiet. He's just allowed Trump to destroy Trump. And I think that's the key to destroying these monsters, these larger-than-life lying monsters who break all the rules. Like, you can't fight them. You just do a judo thing of just standing back and going, okay, you burn yourself out, mate. You go for it. You say whatever you want. We're just going to stand here and slow clap you. Like, yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Amen. Now we have a blue hand, Caitlin. So Suzanne, can you unmute whoever's blue hand is up? And
yeah, so we have Lisa Joyce. So I'm just going to ask to unmute you, Lisa, and
hey,
you should see the button there. And we should
Lisa, have you got a little witch's hat or something you could put on there just for the...
I do, but it's in the other room. Sorry.
You can imagine you wearing a hat. It's good.
Yeah, exactly. Just imagine it right there. Sorry, guys. And I don't even know if I have a question that will make any sense. Caitlin, I loved your comment about the women's union, and the fact that you said that you can't understand why, for example, the Kardashians haven't like created their own social media platform that we can all strike on, for example, or force social media companies to stop all of this abuse. And I'm wondering, like, between yourself and Roisin, if there's not something there, or, you know, in all of this, there's this wave at the moment, but like, where can we take more control? And again, I love that concept that you have of, it's not men hating, it's just like, how can we fix all these things? And we're all on social media, we're all here on these wonderful Zoom nights from the women's podcast, for example, and it's just hearing, and I actually listened to your book, so hearing and reading stuff like this, I feel like, what else can we be doing, you know, also for the next generation of girls?
And Caitlin, talk about the women's union, because we didn't mention that yet, and I
loved it. Yes, please.
Thank you. Well, part of being a writer, I think, is like making wishes. So a lot of the things that I write are kind of wishes that I hope will come true. So when I was writing How to Be a Woman, I was writing that I wished we had a world where women talked about feminism again, and any woman felt they could talk about it. It didn't need to be academics who had studied it for 20 years and knew all the right words, that was a word that every woman felt happy using, and that we definitely seem to be in a world where that's more likely now. And so similarly in this book, I made several wishes. One of them was that it seems crazy to me that, like, you know, we're supposed to be in a market economy, and it's supposed to be market voices that's supposed to give you multiple choices. But in social media, we don't. There's you know, we have Google, we have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have Instagram. There's no alternatives to them. And when we know how toxic Twitter is, and we know that most of it is driven by anonymous accounts, a huge amount of which are bots and trolls, that all research shows us are linked to governments that are against democracy and are trying to change the conversation and make people think that these ideas are normal and are more supported than they are. I don't understand why, e.g., as you say, the Kardashians haven't gone, we are limitlessly wealthy and we have 600 million followers between our entire family. They could start a social media platform tomorrow where everybody had to be registered and non-anonymous with a picture of their face, And and you state the rules, no one's ever stated what the rules of social media are. So you just go, these are the rules, you have to be polite, you don't say these things. If you do, your IP address will be banned forever, you're out of here. Who would not, in an instant, go over there? Like, even if it was just all the followers of the Kardashians, that's 600 million. If all the Kardashians went, we're all over here on this new social media channel, it's the only place you can see our bums now, see you there in a minute, there would be an exodus. And then they could get all their celebrity mates to do it. It would be a money earner for them. They would have furthered democracy. They would have provided a safe space for women, and anybody who's ever had abuse on social media, which is basically everybody apart from straight white men, would flock there in a second. And to the point where I think people would be willing to pay for it rather than it be free. I'd happily pay 20 or 30 quid a year not to have multiple rape and death threats. Like, that's a good investment of my money. A couple of cocktails to not have anybody threaten to kill me before 11 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, I'll pay that.
Caitlin, I have to give you a question from Emily, because I can't believe this. She says, my Wi-Fi here is shit. I'm working on an island off the coast of Africa and it's pitch black, so I can't turn my camera on. But she wants to know, what's the book you're writing? What's the next one?
Oh, so I was watching the John Hughes film from 1986, one of the John Hughes films that most people have forgotten, Weird Science, where two teenage boys make a girl. They've got a computer and
so bad.
What we thought do in 1986, they make a sexy lady who then has sex with them in the shower, even though they're only 16, and then takes them to a really racist encounter in a kind of black club full of like blues singers who go, hey, you kids are cool. It's terrible. Everything that happens in it is appallingly problematic. But the idea that people can make people with a computer, my daughter was watching it and went, why don't you do a gender flip of this? What happened if women started making men? And particularly is going, I don't get it. It's so hard to find a good husband. Like, there are so many more excellent women than there are excellent men. And we know who all the excellent men are. And if their wives die, then 30 seconds after their wives die, there will be 15 excellent women standing on his front doorstep with Tupperwares full of their excellent curries that they've made, hand grinding the spices, going, I'm a brilliant cook, I'm a fantastic lay, I have an amazing career, I'm very beautiful, I do Pilates 3 times a week, I am your second wife. There's a shortage of excellent men compared to excellent women. So I was like, what if 3 single women in their late 30s, early 40s go, okay, I'm not going to go out there looking for men anymore. I'm not going to spend all my time trying to improve a bad man and nagging him. I'm going to do a thing that's actually great for men. Women will stop nagging them and telling them to get better. I'm just going to make the excellent man that I want. So it's called husband material. And it's a feminist retelling. It's a Margaret Atwood-esque retelling of the John Hughes film Weird Science. I
have to give, we do this thing on the women's podcast, Big Night in, Fright's in. We'll give it applause for that. It sounds bloody amazing.
I am having such a hoot writing it.
Listen, we've run out of time here. I know everyone has loved this. I can see by all their witchy faces. This has felt like a massive coven that has convened on Halloween night with the fireworks, and it's just been really great. I know you're off to listen to Boris. Maybe a final word on Boris and a final wish for women watching tonight, because we've loved this. It's been amazing.
It's been so brilliant seeing all your faces. It really has. I wish I'd made Bernard Kerwin, which I suspect maybe might be your husband's login name, smile once. You seem very serious all the way through. But now I made you laugh by calling you Bernard, so that won. I just hope that Boris is our last male Prime Minister for a long time, and that we start some kind of brilliant matriarchy, hopefully formed from the Women's Union, which I've put out there as an idea. Let's form a Women's Union. Let's get women talking about how we can change the world and make it a better place. And let's install a matriarchy. We can't do any worse than these men.
Up the matriarchy. And Caitlin, I have to say, you're pretty much Irish. Like, we kind of own you. We just, decided with Moran as your second name.
I very, very willingly will be kidnapped by you. My dad's whole thing was like, you're in exile here. Our whole family is in exile in this country, but as soon as we can go back to the old land, we will. So like he would talk. He would use a very offensively cliched Irish accent as he said that. So I think I won't involve him in the passport process. I'll just come straight to you guys.
Listen, thank you so much. And thanks everyone for getting dressed up, for posting on Twitter, #ITBigFright. Thanks for being so kind to my daughters. They'll be asking me, did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy it? Did you like it? That's good. They'll be really chuffed. Thank you, Caitlin Moran. Thank you, everybody. And happy Halloween. You're all brilliant.
Happy Halloween, beautiful women. I love you all. I'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye. Bye.